Don't talk to the old lady, my daughter-in-law yelled at the hotel clerk, her voice sharp enough to make the whole lobby fall silent. I stood there, frozen, the words slicing through the air, feeling every eye in the room turn to me. It was like something had cracked inside me, like all the years of caring, of being the matriarch of this family, had been reduced to a single, humiliating moment. It was supposed to be a family vacation, time for us to reconnect after everything that had happened, after the years of distance between me and my son, Thomas. But now, I felt like an intruder in my own family's story, an outsider, pushed aside without even the decency of a quiet dismissal. I had hoped this vacation would be different. After all, it had been so long since we had all spent time together, just the three of us, Thomas, Rachel, and me. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach, hoping that maybe I was just imagining things. But as I stood there, watching Rachel's face twist in disdain, I realized how wrong I was. Rachel had never liked me. She had never truly welcomed me into her life, into their home. I had always tried to play the part of a doting mother-in-law, supportive, kind, willing to make her feel like she was part of the family. But now, I saw it all for what it truly was, a facade. She had been playing a game, one that I wasn't meant to win. Thomas, my own son, who once sought my comfort when he was a child, didn't even look up from his phone. He sat there, as if he didn't hear Rachel's cruel words, as if he didn't see me standing there, feeling smaller with each passing second. I didn't even recognize him anymore. This was the same man I had raised with love, who used to care for me, who once wanted my approval in everything he did. But now, it felt like he was a stranger, someone who had traded his love for convenience, for peace in his marriage. Rachel didn't even bother to mask her contempt. Her words were sharp, her actions colder. As she stood there, glaring at the clerk, I wondered if anyone would ever see me for who I truly was, someone who had sacrificed everything for this family, only to be tossed aside like an unwanted relic. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother to her, I was a burden. A ghost. A reminder of something she wanted to erase. I could feel the weight of those words hanging in the air long after Rachel had finished speaking. Don't talk to the old lady. Those words echoed in my mind, louder than anything else. They were the truth I had been avoiding, the reality I didn't want to face. I wasn't part of their lives anymore. I was nothing more than an inconvenience to them. And just like that, the last of my hope crumbled. I had thought maybe this vacation would be different. I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, we could find some way to heal the rift between us. But now, I understood. There would be no healing. There would only be me, standing in the middle of a hotel lobby, with nothing but the coldness of my daughter-in-law's words and the emptiness in my heart. The truth had never been clearer. They didn't want me here. I walked slowly to the elevator, the sound of my shoes against the polished floor echoing in the quiet hallway. I could feel my chest tightening with each step, but I didn't know what else to do. It felt like the whole world was moving around me, but I was stuck in place, paralyzed by the coldness of Rachel's words. As the doors of the elevator closed, I looked at my reflection in the shiny metal, trying to make sense of the anger and hurt swirling inside me. But I couldn't. The truth was, I didn't understand how things had gotten so bad. I had always tried to be a good mother-in-law. I had welcomed Rachel into our family with open arms. I had offered my love, my support, and yet, somehow, it was never enough. She had never truly accepted me, and I had been blind to it all this time. The elevator moved silently upwards, and I couldn't help but replay the scene in my mind. Rachel's sharp voice, her eyes full of disdain as she commanded the clerk not to talk to me. The way Thomas didn't even look up, as if this was just another day, another moment where I didn't matter. The silence in the room was suffocating. It was like everyone was waiting for me to say something, to do something, but I couldn't. What was there to say? How do you fight against something like this? Against a person who doesn't even see you as a human being? I had raised Thomas with love and care. I had given him everything. And now, I was nothing. As the elevator stopped at the top floor, I stepped out, my legs shaky, my mind spinning. I was supposed to be enjoying this vacation, spending time with my family, but instead, I felt like an outsider. I walked down the hallway to our room, my hand gripping the handle, and I hesitated before entering. Inside, Thomas was sitting on the bed, his eyes glued to his phone. Rachel wasn't there. She had probably gone off to do whatever it was she did when she wasn't making me feel like I didn't belong. I stood in the doorway, watching Thomas for a moment, wondering if he would even notice me. Would he look up? Would he ask me how I was feeling? But there was nothing. Just silence. I finally spoke, my voice quiet, almost shaking. Thomas, do you see me? Do you even care about me anymore? He didn't look up from his phone. What do you mean? He asked casually, as if the words I had just said didn't matter at all. You saw what happened downstairs. Rachel, I trailed off, not knowing how to finish the sentence. How do you explain to your son that his wife had just humiliated you in front of a hotel clerk, in front of strangers? That she had made you feel like you were invisible, like you didn't matter? It's just a misunderstanding, Mom, Thomas said, still not meeting my eyes. She didn't mean it like that. I felt something snap inside me. I had been so patient, so willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. But now, I was done. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice getting louder now. You think that was just a misunderstanding? I paused, letting the weight of the question hang in the air. She humiliated me, Thomas. In front of everyone. And you did nothing. You didn't even say a word. Thomas shifted uncomfortably on the bed but didn't say anything. I could see the discomfort in his eyes, but there was no guilt, no regret. Just indifference. I don't know what you want me to do, Mom, he finally said, his voice flat. She's my wife. I can't just turn on her. That was it. That was the moment I realized I had been fooling myself for so long. I had hoped, for just a moment, that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. That Thomas would see me, really see me, and stand up for me. But he didn't. He never would. I walked over to the chair by the window, sitting down slowly, feeling the weight of the years pressing down on me. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I had given everything to this family. I had sacrificed so much. But now, it felt like it had all been in vain. My heart ached as I thought about all the years I had spent trying to make my family happy, trying to be there for them, only to be discarded when I wasn't needed anymore. I had spent so much of my life caring for others, and now, there was nothing left for me. Not even the basic respect I deserved. I sat there in silence, the tears threatening to fall, but I wouldn't let them. I wouldn't give Rachel the satisfaction. I had to be strong. I had to hold it together. I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. As the evening wore on, the tension in the room grew thicker. I sat by the window, looking out over the quiet resort grounds, feeling more and more like a stranger in my own family. Thomas had gone to bed, leaving me alone with my thoughts, but I couldn't shake the sting of what had happened earlier. The way Rachel had spoken to me, the indifference in Thomas's eyes, it was like a cold wave had washed over me, and everything I thought I knew about my family had been flipped upside down. I had spent my entire life loving them, caring for them, sacrificing my own needs to make sure they had everything they wanted. And now, it felt like it was all for nothing. I thought back to the times when Thomas was little, when he would run to me with tears in his eyes, asking for comfort. I would hold him, reassure him, tell him everything would be okay. Those were the days when I felt needed, when I felt important. But now, he was a grown man, and I was just a burden. I didn't know when it had all changed. When did my son stop needing me? When did he start seeing me as an inconvenience, someone to be ignored, someone to be discarded when I wasn't useful anymore? My mind wandered back to the years I had spent with Rachel. I had tried so hard to make her feel welcome, to be a good mother-in-law, but it was like she never wanted me there. She always found a way to make me feel small, to make me feel like I wasn't worthy of her respect. And now, it was all coming to a head. I couldn't help but feel the weight of those years of trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect mother-in-law, only to be rejected. It wasn't just the way Rachel had spoken to me today, it was the years of little comments, the dismissive glances, the way she had subtly pushed me out of Thomas's life. I had always tried to be understanding, to let it go, to keep the peace. But now, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when I knew deep down that it wasn't. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable, but I refused to let the tears fall. I had done my crying years ago. It wasn't going to help me now. I wasn't going to beg for their love or their attention. I had spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness for them, and it had gotten me nowhere. I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, being treated like an afterthought in my own family. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let Rachel and Thomas control my life. I had earned my place in this family. I had earned my respect. And if they couldn't see that, then it was time for me to find my own way. The thought gave me a strange sense of calm, a sense of strength that I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't powerless. I had spent so many years thinking I had to please everyone, thinking I had to keep the peace, but now I saw that I had a choice. I could either continue to live in their shadow, or I could stand up for myself, even if it meant facing rejection. And maybe that was the hardest part, accepting that I might not be able to fix everything, that I might not be able to make them love me the way I wanted. But at least I could love myself, at least I could respect myself. That thought gave me a small measure of comfort as I stood up and walked to the door. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to face it. I had made up my mind. No more pretending, no more hoping that things would magically get better. I had spent too many years waiting for things to change, for my son and daughter-in-law to see me, to treat me with the love and respect I deserved. But now I realized that I had been fooling myself. I wasn't going to beg for their love. I wasn't going to beg for anyone's approval anymore. I was going to stand up for myself. The morning after the incident at the hotel, I woke up early, my mind already buzzing with 1,000 thoughts. The resort was quiet, the sun barely peeking through the curtains, but I could hear the sound of the waves crashing outside, a reminder of how far I was from everything that had once been familiar. I stood by the window for a while, watching the ocean stretch out before me. It felt like the perfect metaphor for my life, vast, empty, and unpredictable. I knew I had to do something today. I couldn't just sit back and allow Rachel and Thomas to continue treating me like this. I didn't care if they were my family. I didn't care if they were blood. The way they had treated me, the way they had discarded me, it was unforgivable. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and made my way downstairs. I had no idea what I was going to say or how it would go, but I couldn't wait any longer. When I reached the dining area, I found Thomas sitting by himself, sipping his coffee. His eyes flicked up at me briefly before he went back to his phone. It was the same as yesterday, the same indifference that had been eating away at me for so long. But today, it didn't hurt as much. Today, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm, steady. Thomas didn't look up. "About what?" he asked, still scrolling through his phone. "About Rachel," I replied, my voice firm. That got his attention. He looked up at me then, and I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't remorse. It was just surprise, like he hadn't expected me to actually say anything. "What about her?" he asked, his tone casual. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he tried to avoid meeting my eyes. "You saw what happened yesterday," I said, my voice getting sharper. "You saw how she treated me. And you did nothing." He looked uncomfortable now, shifting in his seat, but he didn't say anything. I could feel the weight of the silence between us, thick and suffocating. "You've been treating me like I don't matter, Thomas," I said, my voice cracking just slightly. "Like I'm just some inconvenience you can push aside whenever it's convenient. But I won't let you do that anymore. I won't let Rachel do that anymore." I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to say something, but he didn't. He just stared at me, like he couldn't even find the words. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about anger. This was about standing up for myself, about demanding the respect I had earned. "I've spent my entire life giving to this family," I continued, my voice trembling with emotion. "I raised you. I loved you. I supported you, and now, I'm nothing more than an afterthought. Do you even realize how much that hurts?" Thomas opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He was looking at me now, really looking at me, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was fleeting, and it was gone before I could grasp it. "I'm not asking for your pity, Thomas," I said, my voice steady again. "I'm not asking for you to feel sorry for me. But I am asking for one thing, for you to finally see me. For you to treat me with the respect I deserve." I paused, waiting for him to respond, but he just looked down at his coffee, not saying a word. And that was when I knew. I knew that nothing would ever change. He wasn't going to change. Rachel wasn't going to change. I was never going to be enough for them. And that realization hit me harder than I expected. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt something else, relief. It was like a weight had been lifted from my chest, like I could finally breathe again. I wasn't going to waste any more time hoping for something that was never going to happen. I had given them everything, and now it was time to give something to myself. I turned and walked away from the table, my steps slow but purposeful. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just done. And that, in itself, felt like freedom. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, walking around the resort like a ghost, my mind replaying everything that had happened. I didn't know what to do next, didn't know where to go from here. I had confronted Thomas, and now I felt the weight of the silence that followed. He hadn't said a word after I walked away. It was like everything I had said to him, everything I had hoped for, had fallen on deaf ears. The realization hit me harder than I expected. I had been fighting a battle that I could never win. Maybe it was time to stop fighting. Maybe it was time to start living for myself. As I walked through the hotel lobby, I felt the familiar ache in my chest, the loneliness that had been following me for years. But now, it was different. It wasn't just the grief of losing my husband, it was the grief of losing my place in my own family. I had spent my whole life taking care of others, making sure they had everything they needed, but where had that gotten me? It had gotten me nothing. I had been invisible to them. A shadow in my own life. I walked to the outdoor patio, the cool breeze hitting my face as I sat down at one of the tables, staring out at the ocean. The waves were crashing against the shore, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. It was strange, almost surreal, but I couldn't deny it. Sitting there, watching the water, I realized that I didn't need their approval. I didn't need anyone to validate my existence. I had lived for them long enough, and now it was time to live for me. I had spent so many years making sure everyone else was happy, but I had forgotten about myself. I had forgotten that I deserved happiness too. The thought felt foreign, like a strange idea that had been tucked away for far too long. But now, it was clear. I didn't need to hold on to a family that didn't see me, didn't appreciate me. I didn't need to beg for love or attention. I could stand on my own. I could find my own path. It was terrifying, but also liberating. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I wasn't going to leave the vacation just yet, but I wasn't going to stay in that toxic environment either. I had given them enough chances. Now, it was time to focus on myself. I wasn't going to let their behavior define me anymore. I wasn't going to let them make me feel small. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the water, and I felt something inside me shift. It was like the weight of the years, the disappointment, and the hurt were lifting. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't just an old lady to be ignored. I was Margaret Williams, a woman who had lived through pain, through loss, and through betrayal. But I had survived. And I was going to keep surviving. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I realized that it didn't matter what Thomas or Rachel thought of me anymore. I didn't need their approval to be happy. I didn't need them to define my worth. I had spent my life giving, but now, it was time to start taking. It was time to find my own happiness, my own peace. The world was out there, waiting for me, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold me back. I stood up from the table, feeling stronger than I had in years. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. I woke up the next morning feeling a strange sense of calm. The anger and sadness from the day before had faded into something else, something quieter. I wasn't sure if it was relief or just a numbness from the emotional weight I had been carrying for so long. As I sat at the small table by the window, sipping my coffee, I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't dreading the day ahead. I wasn't worried about pleasing anyone or keeping the peace. I was finally free of that burden. It was strange, but I was starting to think that maybe this trip wasn't about reconnecting with Thomas and Rachel. Maybe it was about reconnecting with myself. I had spent so many years defining myself through my family, through my role as a mother, a wife, a caretaker. But now, it was as if I had forgotten who I was outside of those roles. It had taken me this long to realize that I was more than just a mother-in-law, more than just someone to be tolerated or pushed aside when it was convenient. I was Margaret Williams, and I deserved to be seen and respected. The thought felt empowering, like a light had finally turned on inside me. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't invisible. I was enough, just as I was. As the day unfolded, I found myself walking around the resort, taking in the sights and sounds of a place that was both foreign and strangely comforting. The ocean stretched out in front of me, endless and free, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just here, in this moment, and that was enough. I thought about what had happened with Rachel, how she had humiliated me in front of the hotel clerk, and how I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. I thought about how Thomas had looked at me, as if he didn't even recognize me. But that was the thing, wasn't it? They didn't recognize me, not for who I was, not for what I had done for them. And maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to stop seeking their approval. Maybe it was time to stop being so focused on them. I had spent so much time trying to make them happy, trying to keep the family together, but what had it gotten me? Nothing but heartache. Now, it was time to focus on me. I walked along the beach, feeling the sand beneath my feet, and I smiled to myself. The world was still out there, waiting for me. I didn't need them to make it worth living. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. I could find my own happiness, my own peace. It was up to me. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could face it with confidence. I wasn't just going to sit back and let life pass me by. I was going to take control. I wasn't sure what the next step would be, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own family, make me feel small again. I was going to live for me. I was going to be happy. And that was enough. I spent the next few days in a strange sort of silence. The kind of silence that only comes after a storm, when the air feels still and heavy, but the damage has already been done. I kept my distance from Thomas and Rachel, not out of anger, but because I realized I didn't need their permission to live my life. The resort was beautiful, the kind of place that was meant for relaxation, for making memories. But all I could think about was how much I had been holding on to a version of my family that no longer existed. Rachel was still cold, still distant, and Thomas, despite his quiet attempts to engage, was lost in his own world. I could feel the gap widening between us, but this time, I wasn't going to chase after him. I wasn't going to beg for his attention or his love. I had done that for years, and it had gotten me nowhere. Now, I was done. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the balcony, the warm breeze brushing against my skin. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and for a moment, I felt at peace. It was as if the world had slowed down, and I had finally found a rhythm that didn't revolve around anyone else. I closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore, and I let out a long, slow breath. I had spent so much time trying to make others happy, trying to fix things, to make the family whole again. But I realized now that it wasn't my job to fix everything. I couldn't fix Rachel's attitude, and I couldn't make Thomas see me the way he once had. What I could do, though, was take care of myself. I could stop being the one who always gave, always sacrificed, always tried to hold it together. I had spent years convincing myself that if I just did more, if I just tried harder, everything would be okay. But it wasn't. And I wasn't going to keep trying for people who didn't even see me. I stood up, the decision settling in my chest like a weight lifting off of me. I was done waiting. Done sacrificing. Done pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. It was time to move forward, to take the first step into a new chapter of my life, even if I didn't know what that chapter looked like yet. I walked back inside, found my phone, and started searching for flights. I was going to leave. Not because I was angry, but because I had to. I couldn't keep living in a place where I wasn't valued, where my presence didn't matter. I had raised Thomas, had loved him with everything I had, and yet, here I was, standing on the edge of a new beginning, ready to walk away from everything I had known. It was a strange feeling, but one that I was beginning to understand. It wasn't defeat. It was freedom. The next morning, I packed my bags, feeling a quiet sense of determination. Rachel didn't say much when I told her I was leaving, and Thomas, well, he barely seemed to register what I was saying. But it didn't matter. I wasn't doing this for them. I wasn't even doing it for anyone but myself. I had spent too many years living for other people, trying to be what they needed me to be, and I was tired of it. It was time for me to live. For me. As I made my way to the airport, I felt lighter, like the weight of all those years of trying to please others was finally being lifted. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. I was ready to reclaim my life. I wasn't just an old lady anymore. I was Margaret Williams, and I was going to find my own happiness, no matter what. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to face it. I arrived at the airport feeling a mixture of excitement and fear, a sense of freedom mingling with the unknown. As I stood in line to check in, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. The decision to leave had been difficult, but it was also necessary. I had spent so many years of my life devoted to my family, trying to make everything work, trying to please everyone, but in the end, I realized that I had been sacrificing myself for people who never truly saw me. I had been invisible in my own life. Now, for the first time, I was choosing to see myself. I was choosing to live for me. The flight was long, but my mind was clear. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, but I knew it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was moving forward, and that was enough. When I landed, the unfamiliar city stretched out before me, full of new possibilities. I hadn't planned on this, on just picking up and leaving everything behind, but as I walked through the terminal, I realized that this was exactly what I needed. I needed to break free from the life I had built around everyone else. I needed to find who I was without the weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. I took a taxi to a small hotel, a modest place with just enough warmth to make it feel like home. It wasn't luxurious, but it didn't need to be. All I needed was a place to breathe, a place to think. I spent the next few days exploring the city, walking through the streets with no destination in mind, just taking in the sights, the sounds, the freedom. I found a small cafe where I sat for hours, sipping coffee and watching the world go by. It was simple, but it was mine. No one was telling me what to do, no one was asking for anything from me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living on my own terms. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. But with every passing day, I felt a little stronger, a little more sure of myself. I wasn't just an old lady anymore. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother. I was Margaret Williams, and I had a life of my own to live. The days passed, and I began to make new friends, people who didn't know me as a mother or a wife, people who saw me for who I was now. I started to rediscover parts of myself I had long forgotten. I used to love painting, something I had put aside for years, but now I found myself sketching on napkins in the cafe, the simple act of creating bringing me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I signed up for a local art class, not because I was any good, but because it was something for me. It was something I could do without needing anyone's approval. It was my time. One evening, as I walked back to my room, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me, a calm that had been missing for so long. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but for the first time in years, I didn't care. I wasn't looking for validation from anyone. I was just living. And that, in itself, was enough. I thought about Thomas and Rachel, about everything that had happened, and I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I had let go. And as I stood there, looking out at the city before me, I felt like I had finally come home. Not to a place, but to myself. I had spent so much of my life living for others, but now, I was going to live for me. And that was the most freeing feeling in the world. I sat by the window, watching the rain fall gently against the glass, the city outside quiet and peaceful. The streets below were empty, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally found a place where I could breathe. I had come so far from where I had started, from the woman who had spent years trying to please everyone, trying to keep the peace, trying to fit into a family that never truly saw me. Now, I was living for myself, and it felt like freedom. I had started to rebuild my life in small but meaningful ways. The art class I had signed up for became a source of joy I hadn't anticipated. I had always loved painting, but over the years, I had let it slip away, buried under the weight of responsibilities and expectations. Now, each brushstroke brought me a sense of calm, a reminder that I was capable of creating something beautiful on my own terms. I had also found a small group of friends who didn't know me as the mother or the grandmother, who didn't have preconceived ideas about who I was or what I should be. They simply saw me, and that was enough. We shared meals, talked about life, and laughed in ways I hadn't in years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by my relationships with others. I was just me, Margaret Williams, a woman with her own desires, her own dreams, her own story. I thought about Thomas and Rachel, about the time we spent together before I left, about how their lives had gone on without me. At first, I had been consumed by anger and sadness, wondering how they could have treated me the way they did. But now, I realized that I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep letting their actions dictate how I felt about myself. I had to let go of the expectations I had placed on them, the hope that they would finally see me for who I was, that they would finally appreciate all I had done for them. It wasn't their job to validate me. It was mine. I wasn't going to wait for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to hold on to a family dynamic that didn't serve me. I had to create a new life, one where I was in control, one where I decided what was important. I had learned so much in these past few weeks, not just about my family, but about myself. I had learned that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for, that I didn't need to seek approval from anyone to be happy. I had learned that I could be independent, that I could stand on my own, and that I was worthy of love and respect, even if it didn't come from the people I had hoped it would. The rain had stopped, and the sky outside had cleared. I stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city. I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where my journey would take me, but I knew that I was ready to face it. I wasn't going to let anyone hold me back anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small. I was Margaret Williams, and I was going to live my life the way I wanted to. I was going to find my happiness, and I was going to do it on my own terms. In this emotional journey through family stories, an elderly woman, once a beloved mother and grandmother, faces a heartbreaking betrayal by her own family. After years of selflessness, she finds herself cast aside by her son and daughter-in-law, and the emotional turmoil becomes too much to bear. Through these family stories, we follow her as she struggles with feelings of abandonment, seeking the validation she so desperately desires. Yet, as the story unfolds, the woman begins to realize that the approval of her son and daughter-in-law is no longer necessary. In these family stories, she embarks on a path of self-discovery, learning that true happiness comes from within and that she has the strength to live for herself. The pain and disappointment of being rejected by those she loved ultimately lead her to make a life-changing decision, to leave her past behind and embrace a future where she is in control of her own happiness. Through her courage and resilience, she transforms from a neglected mother into a woman who reclaims her worth. This is a powerful chapter in family stories that highlights the importance of self-respect and the realization that we must first love ourselves before expecting others to do the same. The story doesn't just end with her departure, but rather marks the beginning of a new chapter, where the elderly woman finally finds peace and strength, free from the weight of expectations. As these family stories unfold, we see the complexities of relationships and the painful but liberating journey of standing up for oneself. Whether it's confronting a daughter-in-law who refuses to show respect or a son who can no longer see his mother for who she truly is, these family stories explore the emotional depth of family bonds and the sometimes difficult process of redefining them. Through the characters' growth, these family stories reveal that no matter the circumstances, we can always choose to rewrite our own story and find joy in our own company. Create a 70-year-old woman with white skin. She is wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress with small pearl buttons. Her expression is calm yet resolute. The scene should be a frontal view, showcasing her age and maturity. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Create a 35-year-old woman with white skin. She is dressed in a modern and stylish outfit, a tailored blazer over a blouse. Her facial expression is confident and somewhat dismissive. The scene should be a frontal view. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1. A tense and dramatic moment in a brightly lit hotel lobby. The camera captures the elderly woman, Margaret, standing in front of her daughter-in-law, Rachel, with a sense of quiet fury. The two are locked in an emotionally charged confrontation, with Margaret's calm demeanor juxtaposed against Rachel's hostile, dismissive glare. Tension is thick in the air as the hotel clerk stands awkwardly in the background, unsure of how to intervene. The confrontation feels like a battle of wills, a mother being rejected by her own family, yet holding her ground. Both women are clearly defined by their contrasting emotions. The scene is lit dramatically, highlighting their faces, while the rest of the lobby fades into the background, underscoring the intensity of their exchange. 2. A quiet, peaceful morning in Margaret's life. The camera shows her in her small apartment, sitting at a table with a cup of coffee, dressed in a modest outfit. The soft light from the window reflects her age and experience, and there's a sense of solitude in her movements. Margaret opens a photo album, tracing her fingers across pictures of her son from his childhood. The room is filled with the quiet hum of life moving on, but her expression reveals a longing for something that feels lost. The camera lingers on her face, capturing a mix of resignation and an unspoken desire for connection. 3. Rachel, in stark contrast, is seen in a sleek, modern office space. She's dressed in a sharp suit, busy and focused on her phone. She moves with confidence, her sharp movements and quick decisions showing her commanding presence. The camera follows her as she takes a call, dismissing a colleague with a cold smile. A quick shot reveals her looking at her phone, scrolling past an image of her mother-in-law, her expression unreadable. Rachel's life is a whirlwind of control and appearances, but there's an underlying coldness to her interactions. The office's sterile, bright lighting emphasizes her professional facade. 4. Both women are in a tense shared moment, standing in the family living room. Margaret is in the foreground, with Rachel slightly behind her. They are facing a male figure, the son, who seems caught between them. The room is filled with awkwardness and quiet tension. The scene is charged with unresolved conflict. Margaret and Rachel exchange glances, their emotions like an unspoken battle. The son remains silent, his discomfort palpable. The atmosphere is heavy, as if the weight of years of family dynamics is about to collapse. The lighting is dim, casting long shadows over the scene, symbolizing the growing rift between them. 5. A serene moment of reflection, Margaret sitting by the beach, looking out at the ocean. The camera focuses on her face as she breathes in the salty air, her expression softening as the waves crash against the shore. It's a moment of introspection, free from the chaos of her family's turmoil. The background noise of the ocean contrasts with the quiet storm of emotions inside her. She stands, ready to move forward, her posture more confident now, symbolizing her inner transformation. The soft, natural light paints her as a woman reclaiming her peace and independence. 6. The final scene takes place in a quiet, cozy cafe. Margaret, now dressed simply but elegantly, sits alone at a table. The atmosphere is warm, with soft light from the windows. Her face shows a serene determination, as she gazes out the window. The camera lingers on her as she sips a cup of tea, her reflection calm, finally at peace with herself. The background hums with quiet chatter, but it's distant, this is her moment. She looks content, no longer burdened by her family's expectations. The final shot lingers on her face, capturing the quiet strength she's found, symbolizing the beginning of her new journey. 1. A tense and dramatic moment in a hotel lobby. The elderly woman, Margaret, with white skin and wearing a navy blue dress, stands firmly facing her daughter-in-law, Rachel, who is dressed in a sharp blazer and exudes confidence. Both women lock eyes with a charged intensity, Margaret calm and composed, while Rachel glares at her with a dismissive attitude. In the background, the hotel clerk stands awkwardly, caught in the middle of this emotional confrontation. The space around them is vast, emphasizing the emotional divide between the characters. The lighting is harsh, casting sharp shadows, especially on their faces, drawing attention to the conflicting emotions. The tension between them is palpable, with the whole scene feeling like a high-stakes emotional battle. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 2. Margaret, the elderly woman, sitting alone at her kitchen table in her small, cozy apartment. She has white skin, her expression serene but introspective. She's dressed in a modest outfit, a simple blouse, and slacks. The scene is quiet, with soft morning light streaming through the window, illuminating the photos on the table. Margaret is flipping through a photo album, her fingers gently tracing pictures of her son from his childhood. The room is filled with a sense of solitude and nostalgia. There is no one else around, the stillness emphasizing her loneliness. Her expression is thoughtful, a mix of longing and bittersweet acceptance. This is a moment of reflection, where she silently wrestles with the idea of being forgotten. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 3. Rachel, the daughter-in-law, is seen in a sleek, modern office space. She is dressed in a tailored, professional suit, looking confident and composed. The office is minimalistic, with clean lines and modern decor. Rachel is sitting at her desk, her face illuminated by the light from her computer screen, as she scrolls through her phone. Her expression is focused, almost cold, as she glances at a picture of Margaret on her phone but quickly dismisses it. She adjusts her blazer, looking both professional and indifferent. The scene is filled with the sound of clicking keyboards and soft office chatter in the background, highlighting her detachment from the emotional world around her. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 4. A tense family scene in a living room. Margaret stands at the forefront, dressed in simple yet elegant clothing, her expression calm but firm. Rachel is slightly behind her, arms crossed, looking irritated, and the son stands between them, caught in the middle of this silent standoff. The room is well lit but casts deep shadows around the characters, emphasizing the emotional divide. There's a palpable tension in the air as Margaret and Rachel exchange glances that speak volumes, while the son remains silent, uncomfortable, and unwilling to take sides. The emotional weight is heavy, as both women silently battle for control of the family narrative, with their faces reflecting the years of unresolved conflict. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 5. Margaret is sitting alone by the beach, dressed in simple, comfortable clothes, her face calm and serene as she watches the waves crash against the shore. The sunlight filters through the clouds, bathing her in a soft, golden glow. The camera captures her profile, her expression reflective and peaceful, as she takes in the beauty around her. The vast ocean stretches out before her, symbolizing the freedom and new life she is beginning to embrace. There are no people around, just the sound of the ocean and the wind, representing Margaret's journey of self-discovery and inner peace. This moment is filled with quiet strength as she takes a deep breath, ready to face whatever comes next. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 6. In a warm, cozy cafe, Margaret sits by herself at a small table. She's dressed simply but elegantly, her face exuding a calm determination. The soft light from the window casts a gentle glow on her, as she sips tea, looking out the window with a serene expression. The atmosphere around her is quiet, with the soft hum of conversation in the background. She is alone but not lonely, her posture is relaxed, yet there is an air of contentment and self-assurance. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the moment where she has found peace and confidence. The city outside is distant, representing her newfound independence. This is her new beginning, where she no longer needs validation from others. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon.